Hi, it's Stephen at Goodie Goodie, and I'm doing something really interesting today. It's a cinnamon roll spiral. Here they are. This is a variation on a recipe that I found online. It's done by a Turkish baker who does some very, very cool things. And I'm going to include a link to her YouTube channel in the description section of this video. So we start with a large bowl, put in some yogurt, some vegetable oil, warm water, two eggs minus one of the egg yolks that you separate out to use as an egg wash at the end. There's the yeast going in. Had to think for a second what it's called. Sugar. And we mix that all up. It's a nice recipe in a way because it's pretty simple. Everything goes in one bowl, gets mixed up, and that's about it. It's where it gets a little bit more complex is the putting together the assembly of these. And putting the flour in two sections. So stirring that until it's all combined, and once that's done, I'll add in part 2 of the flour. Now after combining them, start to knead. And kneading is something that you have to keep doing until it feels right. It took longer than I thought it would to knead this. It took me about 20 minutes, which is a very long time. And along the way, I added a little bit of water. So the flour was not being absorbed by the dough. And if that happens to you, just don't add too much, but add a little tiny bit. I ended up adding 3 tablespoons of water, which might be slightly high. 2.5 might have been perfect. But you'll know by the feel whether you need to add water or not. And this is a lot of work. If you hate kneading, do not make this recipe. It is the wrong recipe for you. And there's so many things you can do that don't require doing this. I actually like it, but it is hard. You can see how hard I have to press to make any kind of impact on this dough. Now we divide it into 4 equal parts. Even this, I have trouble cutting through it. I think it's a little bit more dense than some doughs. I think my hand's shaking. Did it. Okay, so there are 4 sections. And all you do is form these into balls. And actually at the end, each of these balls will become a layer in our cinnamon roll. So you can't picture what I'm talking about now, but you will. Okay, so flour a little tray or a plate, and we put our 4 balls on there, and then grab some plastic wrap and cover them. And they'll just rest for 10 minutes to rise a little bit. It's in a lot of baking, you need a lot more rising time than 10 minutes. But again, these don't get super puffy. They don't have to be really light and fluffy, so 10 minutes seems to be fine. And there we go. That was a very quick 10 minutes. Now this is the coolest part of this recipe, of this video. Put some flour on the counter, and we're going to roll out one of these balls. But I'm not using a traditional rolling pin. I'm using a dowel, and this is something I got from this lady in Turkey. Her dowel is actually narrower than the one I'm using, but this is something I had, so I used it, and it worked fine. It was pretty good. But again, hers is a little bit narrower than this. It's just really good for rolling out large circles of dough. And when you do this, you get a real feel for the dough underneath underneath the dowel. It feels very different from using a rolling pin. So I throw a little bit more flour in there, continue rolling, and the goal is to achieve a 35 millimeter circle, which is around 13 inches. And it's not hard to do. I found it really easy, and it's actually fun. Cool, eh? So now I'm just playing. I think I'm already there. I just like using the dowel. Perfection. Now this is, again, so cool. You can pick things up by rolling it onto the dowel, move it, unroll it. So I was really just practicing. I could have just put it off to one side, but I wanted to unroll it again just to make sure I could do it. And now this is, we do this 4 times. Each layer, each of our 4 layers gets melted butter brushed onto it. And that's very satisfying. It's so easy to see how where you've brushed and where you haven't. Very nice. Look at that. And now I'm putting on cinnamon sugar. Now this is where I have to confess something. I told you I was doing a variation on somebody else's recipe. And so I made it into more of a dessert recipe. But after it was all finished and I tried it, I felt like it needed a lot more sweetness and even more cinnamon. So our recipe is bang on, but it's not actually what I'm doing here. So it needs brown sugar and cinnamon and a lot more than what you see here. So I've just sprinkled it on. Oh, look at this. How cool is this? That's taking one of our pre-made layers, rolled out layers, and putting it on top. And you can stretch that out so that the perimeter of the circle lines up exactly with the one underneath. And again, it looks like this would be hard to do, and it's not. It's actually really easy. It's very enjoyable to do this because it's so perfect. And you stretch it and you press down the edge. When you press the edge down, it just sticks to the layer underneath. A lot of it because you've got the butter and cinnamon layer under it. Look at that. Isn't that cool? So this is our second layer going on. And we're going to repeat what we did before. Brush on butter, add the cinnamon and brown sugar. Again, very satisfying to do this. And now we have all 4 layers on there now. And cutting it with a pizza cutter, which I have never used before in my life. So this was new to me. I always use a knife, but I bought a pizza cutter just to try it out. And I like it. It works really well. For something like this, it's perfect. It was very easy to cut long, straight, even strips. I kind of divided it in half, then quarters, and then a third, which I just sort of did by eye. But it was easy to do, so I have 12 strips. This will end up making a dozen cinnamon rolls. And now here we go, rolling our cinnamon rolls. The ends were a little bit smaller, not a lot smaller, a little smaller. And very important here, tucking that tail end underneath. And you need to do that really well. Don't just do a token little tuck. You have to really get it under the roll because when you start baking them, it'll pop out. There's a little bit of extra. That's from using the pizza cutter. That was pretty good. What I did there, that's perfect. Really tuck it under. And they look great, eh? Now we cover those with plastic, and again, they rest for another 10 minutes. I've got to mention, by the way, I never do these recipes before you see me doing it in a video. I'm not Martha Stewart or any other big name baker out there. So when I do it, it's first time, and I'm as surprised as you are sometimes with what ends up happening. So now we're using the egg wash. That's the 1 egg yolk with 2 tablespoons of water, or 2 teaspoons of water, added. And there they are in the oven, 375 degrees. These were in there for 20 minutes, basically till you think they're done. Try them with a spatula underneath, see if they come off properly. And look at the layers. That's so cool, eh? And there we are, cinnamon rolls in layers. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to catch our TV show, Baking for Change, on cable channels across Canada this fall.